Hey everybody, welcome to the Ground Effect podcast, where we dive into the heart of Formula One, bringing you the latest news, insider analysis, and sharing our thoughts on the motorsport we love. So come and join us, G and Mick, as we look forward to what promises to be an exciting 2025 Formula One season.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the Ground Effect podcast. Today's episode we're going to look back at what was an enthralling Melbourne Grand Prix. Definitely a lot to cover, but before we get into that, I bring in my good mate G. How you going, man?
Yeah, good mate. It was a really exciting race, lots of action, and like we discussed on a previous episode, that rain just threw up a lot of different strategies and accidents. So yeah, definitely one of the best races to start the season off, that's for sure. Now I heard you had a little bit of a problem over there getting your head around daylight savings and missed the start.
So on my Formula One app, it said 3 p.m. taken to daylight savings. It was actually 2 p.m. up here in Queensland. So I managed to miss the first 12 laps of the race, which I was not happy about at all. But yeah, I managed to sit down and catch the rest of what was a pretty awesome race in the end, thanks to the weather. And like we mentioned, that weather, what was going to make that race what it was. And there's plenty of talking points to cover. So before we get stuck into it, we'll go over the top 10 results. So what did our top 10 look like, G?
Yeah, so the top 10 point finishers. Lando Norris in P1, Max Verstappen in P2, George Russell in P3, P4, Andrea Kimi Antonelli. He was reinstated after getting a 5-second penalty overturned. Alex Albon, strong position, P5 for Williams. Good result for Lance Stroll, P6. Now Nico Hulkenberg picking up the points for Sauber in P7. And Charles Leclerc, the first Ferrari across the line of P8. A disappointing Oscar Piastri, P9. And Lewis Hamilton rounding out P10 in his first official race start for Ferrari. Well, I reckon we start with the rookies, considering you made a big rookie error with the daylight savings time. I think, yeah, if we go straight into the rookies and how they performed over the weekend, and let's have a look at who's under the most pump coming into China for this weekend.
If you're going to pick anyone under the most pressure, you're going to have to go Doohan. He ended up having a really, really strong weekend, I think. Struggled a little bit in FP1, but built into the weekend, and then come qualifying, he was there with Gasly, and that's kind of all he could do. Something happened while he was on the upshift from third to fourth. Might be something similar to what happened to Sainz, but we'll get into that a bit later. But yeah, so it was just unlucky for him. He was doing a really, really good job up until then. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, he had a strong Friday and Saturday. I mean, all he really needs to do is prove that he can hang with Gasly, and I think he did that. Coming into the race, I wouldn't say, we know there's a lot of pressure on him with the whole Colapinto factor there at Alpine, but, it's a tough one because, I mean, those conditions were extremely tough. I mean, look, we saw Fernando have a moment, a tough one for Jack. Definitely a tough one. I thought he's done enough. I don't think he's going to be under too much pressure coming to China, but yeah, he definitely needs a good result there. I think the driver probably under the most pressure, I would say, would be Lawson. I think, again, it's a tricky one. I mean, he had a compromised P3 with a power unit problem, and then come qualifying, he was probably underdone. Also, don't want to make too many excuses here for him, but the only driver on the grid that had never raced in a competitive formula on the track, so probably a little bit underdone, and the race just never really came to him, and making that mistake as well by crashing out. So yeah, in my opinion, probably Lawson is under the pump. But yeah, a tough one for all the rookies. I mean, we only had 2 finish the race, and that was Kimi. Who else? Ollie Behrman got over the line without incident as well. So definitely a tough one first up.
I think with Lawson, right, he's going to be under pressure because we saw what Max did, right? As far as the crash, I mean, it was a bit of a tough one. They made a decision to keep him out longer on medium tyres. He just aquaplaned. Once that happens, there's nothing you can do. You're just a passenger. Like you said, probably a little bit underdone for his liking. But I still think he's in for a good season. He'll probably feel a lot more comfortable coming into the European rounds.
Yeah, and I mean, Lawson's a pretty cool customer. I don't think he'll be too stressed out about the result. I mean, naturally, he'll be really disappointed. I mean, we've got to mention poor old Hadjar, absolute shocker on the formation lap. Again, tricky conditions, street circuit with the white lines, extremely slippery. Naturally, it's your first race. You want to prove that you deserve to be there. So, yeah, it was pretty gutted, you could tell. A lot of tears, I think, going on under that helmet all the way back to the paddock. But it was a really nice touch to see Anthony Hamilton come up and console him and just offer him a few words of support, which was, I think, a really nice touch.
No, it was good to see. Rookie mistake, right? I guess that's all you can put it down to. He was on the warm-up lap and he just lit the tyres. Wet conditions, tricky. These cars are incredibly hard to drive. They're not meant to drive in the wet. So, yeah, I'll put that down to, just a rookie mistake. And I think the team probably see it that way as well. I don't think there'll be too much pressure on him. But, yeah, he'll have to come out and put in a good performance in China.
Yeah, I think the driver would be very relieved after the race would be Ollie Behrman. I mean, he had a big off in, it was FP1, wasn't it? FP1, FP2, I can't remember exactly which one it was, which really destroyed the beginning of his weekend, and then went back out again once they fixed the car and had another off. So for him to finish the race last of the runners, I think will be a nice little confidence booster for him that he got through that. So I think that could have been an absolute disaster of a weekend had he not completed the race. But he'll definitely be feeling a lot better coming into China. And, I mean, you've got to give props to Antonelli. He had a really great drive. A couple of little mistakes here and there, of course. But, he was pretty prominent. A few good passes on Hulkenberg there. And he was pretty racy. So, and again, in just really tough conditions. So he has done a world of good for his self-confidence going into the second round. Interesting times there because China's going to be a tough one because it's a sprint race. So these guys aren't going to have a lot of time behind the wheel. They're only going to get one practice session and then straight into a sprint quali. So, yeah, going into that, if you're a rookie and you've had a pretty bad weekend coming out of Melbourne, tough gig, but hey, that's your job, right?
I think, yeah, Ollie did himself a world of good, just keeping it on the black stuff after, putting it in the wall in P1, trying to find the limits. Yeah, and just a couple of other little mistakes. Definitely felt a lot better about himself just finishing that race. Kimmy, he's just proved why Toto put him in the car. I mean, he had a bit of luck there on lap 16. He's lucky he didn't go into the wall. Otherwise, it could have been a very different story. But kid's got talent. There's no doubt about that. And I think also, too, being in the wet was a bit of a level off for Mercedes as well, which helped. So, yeah, like you said, these rookies are it's a tough initiation going to China, sprint race. You're meant to be on it from the get-go. So interesting to see how they all go.
Yeah, definitely. But definitely a good P4 result there for Kimi. I mean, he was demoted for a little while there with a 5-second penalty back to 5th, but that was overturned a few hours later. So, and I mean, he was only, if you look at the results, Kimi was only 2 seconds off his teammate George Russell. So for P3, so definitely a great start to his career, that's for sure, and he'll be extremely happy with that. Now, the other big talking point that I'd like to cover is, I would say, Lewis Hamilton. Didn't have too bad of a race, really. A couple of little mistakes, but hey, who didn't make mistakes during the race? But that relationship he needs to build with his new engineer at Ferrari is going to be quite an intriguing story over the season.
Look, that relationship is something that's going to take time to build. You also got to remember your first race, pissing down rain, trying to work with an engineer, trying to build a relationship with an engineer, trying to learn how to drive that car in the wet. People just think jump in another car and you can be just as fast, but it's not like that. There's different steering wheels, different processes, different modes, and the way the steering wheel works and how you use all those modes are all different. It's not like it was when he was in the Mercedes car where it was just like muscle memory, second nature. He's got to learn all this stuff as he goes along. But yeah, I mean, Ferrari, man, they just nowhere. Like the whole weekend, they just didn't even look in the fight the whole weekend.
Definitely right. I think a lot of people underestimate the engineer driver relationship. That's something that is built. There's a lot of trust that gets built, and just the way that the engineer needs to communicate the info over to the driver. Some drivers obviously like a lot of info, some don't. That'll take a little bit of time to build, and you can only really, you got a little bit of testing, you got stuff going over like P1, P2, P3, etc. But during the race, you can't really simulate that. So that'll just come through pure experience, and I'm sure they'll nail that and get that relationship, on point over a few races. But yeah, there was some really, really interesting radio messages between the two. Likewise with Charles and his engineers. A couple of good exchanges there.
Yeah, this is where I think Lewis will really help the team later on down the track. Once he's accustomed to the car, knows all the processes, has a bit more of an understanding with his engineer. Because, yeah, like you said, you look back when he was a Mercedes, Bono knew what Lewis needed just by the tone in his voice. You got to learn that now with someone completely new. In Australia, you're trying to do that and stay on the track at the same time. In a positive note, he did lead a couple of laps, which was good to see. Yeah, Ferrari got some work to do, I think. Be interesting to see their pace in China if it's dry.
Yeah. Again, we haven't really seen sort of true pace. Okay, we've got a bit of an understanding through qualifying over the weekend. But yeah, until we get a proper dry race, that'll definitely give us a better idea of where most of the teams are at. Norris, good win to him. He was under a lot of pressure there, tricky conditions. And he did the job. Naturally, there was that one little escapade where he went off, and I think that's what also threw Oscar off a little bit as well, where they sort of went off together. Oscar, really tough for him. I really thought if there was someone that was going to beat Norris on Sunday, it was definitely Piastri.
Piastri clearly had the pace trouble, Lando. I think that was a really good win in the end for Lando. It's a good marker for the season. It was a pretty solid drive. No real dramas. Yeah, like you said, that little escapade into the gravel followed by Piastri. My only concern is if these mistakes, like Piastri has to cut these mistakes out because that's what will cost him, as it did Lando last year. Just too many little mistakes, just pushing maybe just that little bit too hard. Yes, tricky conditions, and you could see that his first off where he did run wide into the gravel, I think it was turn 6, he just understeered. So there's not a lot you can do in those conditions. Maybe was a little bit wider, bit of lack of concentration, and trying to push Lando, He's got to push him to make him make mistakes, but Lando was definitely a solid drive, man. That was a good drive.
Yeah, there were moments there where he sort of really came back at Lando, and he was probably within a second, and there's a little bit of radio communication between McLaren and Piastri to sort of like hold position, which I believe it was just during the part where they were sort of lapping some back markers, and then Zach Brown came out and said that they're free to race. Naturally, Zach will be disappointed. He pretty much had almost a guaranteed 1-2 finish on the cards there, but look, he must walk away from Melbourne pretty damn happy. They were definitely the pick of the bunch out of all the teams. One thing that is sort of a big talking point was just how well the McLarens looked on those inters. They just did not burn those tyres out like the Red Bull. Because Max was there and then he wasn't. So they're looking good on tyre wear. Yeah,
I think that's going to be a big factor. At least the first couple of races anyway, until Red Bull can get on top of that. It was probably a bit of a role reversal last year where McLaren were really hard on its tyres and Max would sort of just sit there and wait. That McLaren seems to be using its tyres relatively well, can keep them in the window for a lot longer. I think Helmut said, we were good for about 6 laps and then after that we just had nothing. Max, man, what a gun, bro. That dude's insane. It's just going to be a wicked championship if it's those 3 fighting whole season. And then hopefully, Ferrari and Mercedes can get in the mix.
Yeah, Max he definitely has a weapon. He's great in the wet. He showed that he was human. There was a little sort of like lock up going wide into one of those right-handers, which allowed Piastri to pass him. But otherwise, he was pretty flawless. And, he's just consistently flawless. He just doesn't really make any mistakes. And that's just what makes him such a generational talent driver. Even if Red Bull hasn't got that outright quickest car over the season, you just can't discount him because he's so consistent with getting like those results, top 3. So yeah, he's definitely there. It's going to be tight, I think, between Piastri and Norris, and if it is throughout the whole season, it'll just be sort of interesting to see how Zach handles that one. It will be a problem, but it'll be a nice problem to have.
Regarding Max, he just extract everything out of that car. Another real interesting thing, I think, for the season is the upgrades and how quickly teams bring the upgrades. Because then I don't think you're going to get grades throughout the whole season. I think after, I think I heard somewhere it was like up to 20 to 30% of the season that's going to be all eyes on 2026. So those first few upgrades, I think, are going to have a real big impact on the state of the championship, at least by the summer break. And then I don't think there's going to be too many well, there definitely won't be any big upgrades. There may be little tweaks here and there, but I think, these first couple of months with the upgrades is going to be super important to how the championship plays out.
Now, I would like to put a little shout out to Nico Hülkenberg, and the reason being, he finished in a very respectable P7, and with that, he picks up 6 points. He has picked up more points for Sauber in that one race than they did all of last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's Hulk doing Hulk things, right? He did that all last season with Haas. He was just there to pick up the pieces, kept it on the black stuff. They didn't, they certainly weren't expecting to be where they finished. They were saying, the first stint, they just didn't have any pace at all. Keep it on the black stuff and watch all your opponents fall by the wayside around you, and I think Bortoletto, up from his little mishap, I think he did a really, really good job. That first stint, he was with Nico the whole time. He was there overall. I think he did a really good job. Beat Nico in qualifying, so that's a good effort.
Not bad for a B-grade driver, according to Helmet. Helmet was just being a helmet, of course. I don't know if you heard, but yeah, he sort of came out and he didn't really rate Bortoletto, apparently, called him a B-grade driver. And I think old Fernando Alonso was a little bit pissed off about what was said about Bortoletto. But yeah, I agree. He did pretty well. He was there. He was mixing it with Hülkenberg. So he'll be disappointed that he did come off. But I think overall he'll be relatively happy going into China. But yeah, Hülkenberg, look, he's an experienced driver. He just did what needed to be done, right? And when you are like one of these back market teams, when you have these mixed conditions at a race, I mean, it's an opportunity. If you finish, you've got a pretty good opportunity to pick up points. So they've got to, these teams have to make the most of it and really capitalize on the others failing by the wayside, right? So, great drive. And also, and look at Stroll and Albon, top drives for them as well. Albon in P5, Stroll in P6.
Yeah, I mean, for Albon, for me, that pace that Williams has is legit. Like, they've got some decent pace in that car. That pace and then the strategy call, bring him in. I think he was one of the first in with Russell and Lando, if I can remember correctly, come in on the Inters. That made all the difference. Good strategy, decent pace. For me, Williams looked good. Unfortunate for Carlos. Same, had that incident with the RPM spike. Good that it wasn't a driver error.
Yeah, it was a bit of a funny one, wasn't it?
I mean, it was his decision to bring Alex in. He told the team, no, you got to bring him in because you're not going to survive. So they boxed him. Yeah, put it home in 6th. And I think that's a real big confidence booster for Albon too going forward.
Yeah, I've always felt like Albon is very much like a confidence driver. If he loses confidence, he sort of falls by the wayside. But when he's like locked in and confident, he can put those races together. Unfortunate for Carlos. It was a real funny one going into the final turn and just losing it under a safety car, being shown that it was some sort of RPM spike, torque spike. That was a bit of a funny one. So you'll be disappointed about that. I think a good weekend for Albon overall. We've talked about how he's probably had some of the weakest teammates over the last few years in relation to his skill level. And I've always sort of thought it's been a little bit too easy for him. So getting Carlos in the car next to him puts him under that pressure to perform week in, week out. And he did that. He out-qualified Carlos as well. So that'll be interesting to see how that obviously plays out over the season. But yeah, he'll be looking forward to China this weekend. Other talking points, I would say probably one of the biggest losers for the weekend would have been Tsunoda. I think finishing in P12, he'll be really disappointed because he had such a strong weekend, strong qualifying. He was doing well during the race, and then, just bad strategy kind of ruined it. He'll be really disappointed not to walk away with any points.
That's what these wet races do and these mixed conditions do, right? It just adds a whole nother layer of pressure to make sure you're on the right tyre at the right time. If you miss it by a lap or half a lap, it can completely change the complexity of your race. You can be up there in the points 1 second and the next thing you're lagging down the back. So, yeah, it was unlucky for him. Like you said, he had a really strong weekend up until the final result. So he can definitely take a lot of positives out of that. And I think he seems to be maybe relishing being that number one driver in the team. So I look forward to seeing what he can do in China.
I guess driver we haven't mentioned, Esteban Ocon, his debut for Haas, pretty uneventful, finishing P13 ahead of his teammate Ollie in 14th, last of the runners. Yeah, bit of a quiet one for old Esteban, bit of a non-event race for him. I think, it looks like Haas have a little bit of work to do coming into the season, and naturally they'll be relying on his experience to push that team forward. Pierre Gasly finishing P11. I mean, he'll be pretty disappointed with Alpine. He was there in the points for a while and then just sort of got swallowed up in the end. So he'll be walking away disappointed not picking up any points for Alpine as well.
I think Ocon... it's a strange one with Ocon because I don't feel like he's under pressure, but at the same time, I feel like the pressure is going to build because I think they're expecting him to jump in and be a like for Nico. You know, we saw what Nico did last year in that car, and I think, you know, they're kind of expecting Ocon to do the same, if not better. So at the moment, I don't know if there's any real pressure there, but if he has continuously have these lackluster weekends and he can't pick up some points, the pressure is definitely going to start to mount. Yeah, Gasly, same sort of thing. It was a bit of a non-event. There's definitely some work to do there. I think Gasly was just happy to finish.
I think anybody was just happy to finish that race. That's for sure. It was just sort of all over the shop with conditions. So as a spectator, I mean, we won't complain, but I'm sure some of the drivers, they had to put a tough shift in, that's for sure. Aston's, yeah, I mean, they'll be happy picking up points with Stroll, of course. Old Fernando had a little bit of a mishap there. Looked like he got a left rear on that curb and just got on the throttle and it just sort of threw him off. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're Hadjar, right? Think of it like this. You go off and you're absolutely gutted, but then to see, Fernando Alonso make a mistake and some of these other more experienced drivers make a mistake definitely must soften the blow just a little bit.
You go off and then you see all your rivals going off and the chaos that ensued. I mean, it's definitely going to make you feel better. Yeah, it was just, one of those things for Alonso. He very rarely does he make a mistake. Like he said, he touched that curb and then there was some gravel left on the circuit from another car and he's just hit that and the car's just gone around and, basically a passenger. Yeah, in the end, it was a good strategy call from Aston to bring Stroll in when they did and get him on that, right tyre, right time. This is what it's all about. Clearly makes all the difference. Again, another good confidence-boosting drive from Stroll, although he's always seemed to be not too bad in the wet. So it was a good showing now, I guess. There's still a lot of work to do for Aston. When you looked at that car in qualifying and even in the practice sessions, they were well and truly off the pace. So I don't know what they need to do there, but there's obviously something not right when we compare them to the last few seasons where they've been really strong at the start of the season and then built up over the season. It seems like this year they're already on the back foot there. So bit of work to do.
Yeah, he must be pretty happy because last year was a bit of a shambles for him, sort of all over the place and under a bit of pressure to perform, no doubt. Maybe this is his season where he gets a bit of that consistency back.
Yeah, I mean, that whole season last year was a shambles for him, wasn't it? So he started on the right foot. Hopefully he can just carry that momentum and have a better season than he had last year, which is what I think, they're all kind of aiming for.
No, for sure. Now, moving on to China this week. So it's, I think, for some of those drivers that didn't have a great first up race in Melbourne, at least they can get straight back into the saddle come Friday, because you don't really want to be waiting around for 2 or 3 weeks trying to, make amends of a poor showing. So I'm pretty excited that we've got back-to-back races to start the season off. Definitely not going to complain about that. Yeah, big one coming up, especially for those rooks.
You basically just touched on it. All those drivers that didn't have the weekend that they wanted to start the season will be definitely out there to make amends. Yeah, China, like you said, is going to be very interesting, different format. I'm really intrigued to see. McLaren were clearly dominant car. Hopefully we get a dry race and we can really see the true pace of that McLaren because I think they're probably even quicker than what they look on Sunday. So it's going to be very interesting to see. We're going to be talking about it in the next episode, our preview and our thoughts on China. So hopefully you can join us then, and we look forward to talking to you then. So catch you in the next one. Laters.
See ya.